we get calls and emails from parents who, they're thinking about pulling their kids out and they're really scared. They themselves went to school and school did not teach them to have the confidence to raise their own children. And so I feel like I'm helping parents to understand that, they help their child learn up until they went to school and evenings and weekends and after. It's a parent who's helping them that whole time. And I'm trying to help parents get that confidence back that they are able to do this, that I can introduce them to other parents who have been doing this for a long time, that there are so many resources available, that there are so many options available. There's so many different ways to do this. And this narrow definition of schooling is one way.
Welcome to the Unschooling Lifestyle. In this episode, we dive into the inspiring journeys of two remarkable creators and advocates for children, Kristen Himm and Katy Purviance. They have crafted unique spaces that nurture curiosity, promote self-directed education, and most importantly, respect the voices of children. These environments not only foster a sense of community for parents seeking connection with like-minded individuals, but also provide vital support for those reimagining what a life in partnership with their children can truly look like. Join us as we explore their insights and the powerful impact they are making in the new era of education.
Hello, everyone. We have Katy and Kristen, which they have both been part of our podcast in the past, but today we're going to do just a little intro to the unschooling spaces and self-directed spaces that they both have. And how have you guys seen your community grow? So we'll start with Kristen with a little bit of your story and how your needs have evolved, supported the community since you started. What have you seen so far?
So that's a fabulous question. Thank you also for having me, Julietta. And it's really exciting to be here with you and Katy both. So
I love it.
Yeah, it's really great. So honestly, there was no community in my view. There was definitely a homeschool community in our city before I started, but I didn't know any of them. I pivoted very quickly from being a public school teacher into wanting to serve the homeschool community. But when I started, I really knew like 2 homeschool families. And I also didn't really think, this is me being a little bit like, I don't know, just candid, I guess. I didn't really think about forming community when I started. I had this like, I'm going to start a business. It's going to serve homeschoolers and it's going to replace my teaching income. That was sort of where, and a bonus would be if I could get some friends for my kids because I'm pulling them out of school. And so that was sort of where I was at the beginning. And now I'm all about like, we need to be a community. And we have like, we've formed a community around our space, but now we really need intentionality. And that's where my focus is right now is being very intentional about the community that we're building and about the shared values and beliefs in the community that we're building. So we've kind of shifted in the 3.5 years we've been doing it.
Katy, can you share your thoughts on that as far as your story a little bit? And then how have you seen the community, the needs around your community? I know you're a little newer to the arena, but very strong.
Oh, thank you. We started September 18th. I would say community building was one of our biggest values right out of the gate. For people who know my story, it took me 18 months from really getting started to opening day while also working full time in the public system. Community is very important to me. And the reason for that, it's, I want community, first of all, right? And then I met with parents one-on-one and in small groups and coffee shops for about a year before we opened, just getting to know who is out there, what are people already doing, what are people looking for. And the thing I kept hearing time and time again from mothers was this exact phrase, I am starved for community. And the way that plays out in our co-op is that, parents don't have to stay, right? If your kid is ages 5 and up, we offer drop-off. We're one of the few options in the area that offer drop-off. But what we discovered is that a lot of parents want to stay because they're working on building community, they're making friends with each other. And, sometimes they will drop off, but a lot of times they'll just stay and chat with each other. And It's beautiful. It's beautiful. We need this too.
How do you bridge the gap between traditional school and self-directed education practices for parents that are like starting out? Because they're so different. And I feel like the deschooling process to go from one end to the other.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think that much about making a bridge across that gap, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm trying to sort of picture it, but I do get calls from parents like at least a few times a month who are saying, I want to homeschool my kid. We're in the public school system. We want to homeschool. What do we do? Like, we don't know what to do. And because we lean very unschoolish, both personally and in our space, our community space, I honestly try not to scare people too much by jumping directly to that, because I think a lot of people are like, whoa, that is not what I was asking, lady. Like, nuh-uh. So, I will talk people through like the legal requirements in our state, because they're usually calling locally.
Yes.
And then I will tell them, and the legal requirements in our state are very minimal. So it's like, register your kid and follow these guidelines, but nobody's really going to check up on you.
Okay.
So I'll tell parents that they need to do that. And then I'll go into their options. I'll say, well, you have options from that point. It's up to you what you build with your kids. And I'll give them, I'll say, some people use curriculum, some people use online curriculum. And then I say, and then there's the approach that I do. And so I kind of like lead up to it, and I'll say, and we really just follow children's interests. Sometimes I'll use the word unschool or self-directed. Sometimes I don't. And then I also really love to give people sort of a list of resources in our area. I don't ever want people to think that we're the only resource in our area, because we're not, and we're not necessarily a great fit for everybody. So I will tell people about, other co-ops or other homeschool opportunities in our area.
That is so amazing, though. Yeah, because I feel like people do get scared when you start talking about and sharing some of the stories that we have been through. They're like, oh, no, that's not where I want to go. And I'm like, but you should. And they're like, no, I'm not ready for their lady. Yes, I feel you on that. How about you, Katy? Do you get a lot more beginning homeschoolers versus people that are already thinking about self-directed education?
I was just right before this call, I was talking to someone about this. This is something that we are trying to figure out. Most of our kids, they've been homeschooling the whole time. Their parents have already read Peter Gray. They're already familiar with all the things. Like, they read the website, they weep tears of joy, and they enroll, right? But then we get calls and emails from parents who, they're thinking about pulling their kids out, and they're really scared. They themselves went to school, and school did not teach them to have the confidence to raise their own children. And so I feel like I'm helping parents to understand that, they help their child learn up until they went to school, and evenings and weekends, and after. It's a parent who's helping them that whole time. And I'm trying to help parents get that confidence back, that they are able to do this, that I can introduce them to other parents who have been doing this for a long time, that there are so many resources available, that there are so many options available. There's so many different ways to do this. And this narrow definition of schooling is one way. I think it might be the worst way. And I just try to paint a picture of how it's possible for them, because a lot of parents don't even believe that they can do something that they've already been doing. Right. Yeah.
That is so, so true.
And then I really notice when kids come to visit us, if a kid's been homeschooling the whole time, they fit right in. It's very easy. It's a very easy transition. If a kid is coming directly from the sit down, shut up model of school, directly from being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and when to stop doing it to do the next thing, they have so much difficulty with just being, and so much difficulty with even knowing what to do. Right. They might say that they are bored, right? Like, in school, every moment of the day is so structured and so planned, and there's no space for what any particular child wants to do or is interested in. It's all about this gauntlet, this conveyor belt of processing children into into obedient workers, right? There's so much chair training and so much just training to take instructions without talking back about it. And a lot of kids, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult for them to go from that environment to one where they can move their bodies and one where they can eat when they're hungry and they don't need to ask permission to go to the bathroom and they can go do whatever they want. Just please clean up after yourself. That's all I'm asking, right? But that transition is so hard for school kids. And so this is something I've been thinking a lot about, and we've been thinking a lot about, is how do we help educate the parent more about the deschooling process? Because adults need to deschool themselves as well.
Yes. I mean, I cannot agree with that more, because that really was the beginning of our journey. The schooling process was really what took our journey on a different level, in a more a life of respecting my children for who they are and not who I wanted them to be. So I needed to go through the deschooling process myself, big time, like big time. So on that note, what I know, Kristen, do you still hold, like, circles, meetings for parents? Because I've gotten a few of your newsletters. So is that kind of how you also help the parents in the deschooling process?
Yeah, so deschooling is it's definitely a passion of mine at this point. Again, like,
Yes.
not something I ever knew was going to happen when I made that initial choice to like leave
Mhm.
school and start homeschooling, unschooling. But it has totally become this thing for me where, like you, I'm like, we're still doing it. I don't
Yes.
know if it's ever going to stop. And it's
Mhm.
true for me. It's true for my kids. My kid that went to school, and I have one kid that's never been to school, but she still had some more conventional parenting styles from me and my husband. And
Mhm.
so I feel like deschooling is for everyone. And I think,
Yes.
you know, I feel like the older we are in society and the more, adapted to society we are, the more deschooling we kind of need and will probably have. But to answer your question, I do host two, I call them unschool parent support groups.
Mhm.
And we do one in person at our space and we do one online, and people from all over the country come to the online one, which is really cool. Um, and even though it's called an unschool parent support group, I would say that like 90% of our conversations are more about deschooling than about like
Mhm.
how to unschool, because
Yes.
the how to unschool is very much like personalized, and I think it's really informed by our deschooling, if you will, or sort of guided by our deschooling. So yes, I do hold those support groups, and they're free and they're for anybody. So we have parents that come to that are not otherwise involved with our organization. We do have a few parents that come that are also um, involved with our organization, and I would like to see more I would like to see more of our families
Mhm.
involved in that. I don't, but not all of our families consider themselves an unschool family,
Okay.
or an SD or a self-directed family or something. So, obviously can't force it. But there are definitely families that come to our space that I think don't fully or even partially embody the philosophies behind unschooling. So.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I believe the schooling never ends. I really just think it evolves. And the more I'm in it, the more I know it's like a rabbit hole, but a good one, because it helps me be a better parent. And I have noticed that in the way I have raised my younger son, very different, like you, from your child that went to school. So it's so different, because my little one, he's 5 now and he's into the Minecraft. But I remember when my oldest son was into that, I was all about very rude and just being like, that is just the evil. And we are going to take that iPad away and we are not going to have that. I was very rude. I didn't know how to be a better parent, I guess. I didn't know how to do it. Would I do that again? No. Do I regret it? Yes. Have I apologized? Absolutely, because it has been part of the deschooling process for us here. But it's so interesting. Katy, what tools have you guys used to help parents, like you say, to educate them as far as deschooling, and kind of leave the narrative that we've been given as far as like school and obedience and all of that?
So a lot of it has been pretty informal. I do want to get to the point where we have some kind of regular parent circle. We're still
Yeah.
figuring out what that looks like because we're outdoors and it's winter right now, and so there's not a lot of parents who want to sit outside or stand in a circle outside to do that. And so it's been pretty informal. It's been like conversations through Facebook Messenger, like one-on-one with parents, or conversations over coffee, or it's a very feels very grassroots, very one-on-one right now. It's very casual, but yeah, we do want to get to the point where we have some kind of regular, maybe monthly or every 2 weeks gathering to discuss these ideas.
I really think that's what parents, all of the questions that I see a lot in the Facebook groups and part of the communities that I'm part of, it's all about how to get started, but it's just about going into curriculum and all of that. And I myself did that. I mean, I spent $10,000 in curriculum back when I first started, and it's nuts to even think that all that money went there. And I have given all of that curriculum away since then. Yeah, I'm still working. I know, right? Yes, I'm still working on the shelving because I bought the special Maria Montessori like shelving, like inspired to have like the open-ended materials or whatever. I am working on moving those out of my house because I'm just like, it just keeps reminding me though. So I don't know. But let's go into the logistics of both of your spaces. So they're still they're self-directed, but they still work within the guidelines of servicing parents and children, and also you have state guidelines. So Kristen, you're in New Mexico and you started as a business. And for our listeners and our viewers, you can go into that video or that podcast and kind of hear a little bit of that. But you started as a business and you're transitioning into a nonprofit. So talk to me about how is that going and what are the differences that you saw when you started as a business that moved you into a nonprofit. What was that like?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I kind of just jumped into things. I don't think I'm very opposite Katy, I'll say, because I know, Katy, you put so much planning and effort into your project before you started, right? And I
Yes.
was like, let's do this. I don't really know what we're doing, but we're doing something. And so I just started doing things. And we talked about that in the last episode we did with
Yes.
you, Jessica. But yeah, so we started as a business because it was the easiest and fastest way to get started. Nonprofits take a long time to set up, which I've learned now that we're doing our transition. We are still transitioning, and we've been working on it for a year and a half to get, and we're really close. We're like about to submit our 1023 to the IRS for full 501c3 status.
Okay.
So we're getting really close, but it's been quite a process. So I just jumped in. We don't really fit, our organization doesn't really fit any of the categories out there. I don't know if you've come across this, Katy, but like, we're not a daycare, we're not a tutoring center, we're not a school, like we're not any of those things. And people are like, well, what are you? So I call it a learning center or an education center, but to me that's very different than all the other three things I said. And so like, people don't know how to insure us. People don't know how to like list us for taxes. People don't know how to, so there's these different things. And yeah, so anyway, logistically, we've just kind of been like, we're a business, this is what we do, and let people make their own decisions about us. And then, yes, I say we a lot because we are an organization and there's a lot of people there, but it's me. I'm the only owner of the current for-profit business, and I am pretty much the founder of the nonprofit, although I do have a team for the nonprofit side of things at this point. But at one point, even when I started, I said, oh, I'll be nonprofit later if I think that makes sense. And then at some point it made sense. I thought, okay, I don't want to be a for-profit business anymore. I want to be a nonprofit. There were a lot of reasons for that. But probably the biggest one is that I don't want to own it. It's not mine. It belongs to the community. And so that's probably the biggest reason that I wanted to make it nonprofit. access to grants and funding is another one for sure. And also just having like a board to support the work. Like again, it's not a solo venture anymore. It's now I have collaborators. It's not all of the responsibilities will fall on me, stuff like that. So those are kind of my reasons for going nonprofit. And the journey, like I said, has been long, but very worth it. And I'm super excited for when we get to do our rebrand and everything that will happen.
Oh my goodness. What does your pricing structure looks like though, right now?
Oh, okay. So we have two main programs. We have a drop-off program called the Free To program, and then we have a clubs program, and they are priced very differently. And we might be looking at bridging a gap between those two things right now.
Okay.
But our drop-off program can run up to 3 days a week. But families can come as little as a half day a week, as much as 3 days a week. If they're in the drop-off program, they also get to be in the clubs program. It's just like an added thing. And that pricing, we have for both programs, we have 3 tiers. And we have a top tier where they pay a full amount and have 0 volunteer requirements. And there's a middle tier where they pay a smaller amount and are asked to volunteer a few hours a month. And then the lower tier, where they pay the least amount and have the highest volunteer commitment. I can talk about why I'm already rethinking that structure if you want.
Please do. Yes.
And then for a drop off, it is similar to like daycare, private school pricing. It's, 3 days a week is like $5.50 a month for the top tier pricing or something like that. And then we do have like a sibling price too. So parents do get a discount.
Okay.
And then for clubs, it's very different. They get unlimited clubs for like one monthly price. And again, there's like a 1-child price, 2-child price, 3-child price.
So it's like a membership almost, you get to.
Exactly.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that is incredibly inexpensive. So like for 1 child at the top tier, they pay $30 a month and they can come to as many clubs as they want. So we have some families that do clubs, but maybe either want to be doing Free To, but don't feel like they can afford it, or, that kind of thing. But I am rethinking the whole volunteer requirements for lower money. And I did a survey with our community recently, and because I'm starting to have second thoughts about, well, just because somebody's paying less, that means they have to volunteer. Not everyone has the capacity to volunteer. Especially if they consider themselves low income, they may be working really hard and a lot for that low income and not have the time to volunteer. So when I surveyed families, I asked, do you think these two things should be separate, volunteering and paying? But then I asked 2 other questions. Do you think volunteers should get a discount for volunteering? And a lot of people said yes. And then I said, do you think people who pay less should be required to volunteer? And very few people said yes to that question. And so they mean the same thing almost, but they don't. They mean very opposite things. And so I like I said, I've played with our pricing probably every year since we started, and still working on finding like the sweet spot that brings us because I wouldn't call us financially sustainable just yet. We're getting there. But yeah, so I'm trying to bring us to financial sustainability while also meeting the needs of our community. And that is a really tricky thing.
I love that so much, though, because that's essentially what I feel I need here in Michigan is just a space that is flexible enough to where you can have a membership and just go in and out. As my kids sometimes they say, well, yeah, we want to do this. And sometimes they're like, oh, you know what? Not today. So but I understand the financial responsibility because you're still working, with a building, you're still working with, utilities and all of those expenses that are just very much real. And one of the factors of why people choose not to home educate, because both parents have to be in the workplace, lots of stuff to think about. So I'm really excited. So you say you're pretty close to your 501c3 status, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like how close?
Well, we have to submit the application to the IRS. So we're pretty much there. Like we've done all of our work on the application. We've had it reviewed by somebody else. We did not have the means to have a lawyer or CPA draw up the application for us, which is what people do. But we have great people on our team, one person in particular that has done a lot of work on it. And then we gave it over to a lawyer that we just know to look it over, and they gave us some really great feedback. So now we really just need to do it. Like, we've raised the money we need because it's a $600 fee to apply. So we've raised that money, and we just really need to sit down and get it in, honestly. And then some people get their response back like within a week or two, and other people are waiting months or years. So we just don't know how long it'll take to get the approval that we need from the IRS.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. And I really hope it's like 1 to 2 weeks though, because it'll be super helpful. So, I'll go over to you, Katy. So where are you guys? Because you're almost on the same line of wanting are going to be a nonprofit, but also you're in a different state. And I really think that's very, very important because you also have some news. So let's start. What was your initial status when you started the co-op?
Yeah, we started as an LLC, and I want to kind of echo a lot of what Kristen said, as like, with, insurance, like a lot of insurance companies, they don't know what category to put you in, right? And so that's tricky, but we got that figured out. One thing I tell people, I have people who reach out to me from around the country asking for advice. I'm like, everything starts with what state you're in. Please don't just copy me if you're in a different state. I'm in Washington. If you're in a different state, you have entirely different rules, right? And so one of the reasons why our process took so long is we are the only outdoor self-directed education in the state, right? We pioneered, there was nobody else to like ask, how do you do it, right? It was kind of like, we do have 2 other self-directed schools on the west side near Seattle. They're indoors. They have approved school status. They're private schools. They've been around for decades. So that's, a different rule set a little bit, but kind of the same. And then there was also learning about daycare law, like what precisely counts as a daycare and what precisely counts as homeschooling law. One of the first people I called was the Homeschool Legal Defense Association in Virginia. And I told them exactly what I wanted to do. And they said, if you were in New Jersey, all you would need is a business license. You could open tomorrow, but this is illegal in Washington. So it was a big journey to figure out what is legal in Washington, right? And a lot of it's gray area right now. We don't anticipate it remaining a gray area. We anticipate that as more and more people start centers and as more and more people homeschool in different ways, then it will force policy and force legislation to come up with a definitive statement about what's allowed and what's not allowed. And so I think the reason why it took us so long was just trying to figure out what the law was so that we didn't accidentally violate it, right? And so our schedule, we don't have kids for longer than 3 hours at a time, so we don't run into daycare law. Kids can come for 1 to 5 mornings a week or 1 to 5 afternoons a week or 1 full day or 2 full days, because the best that we can figure out with homeschool law in Washington is that, so it's only the parents and nobody else who is allowed to technically homeschool. Like, I'm a certificated teacher. In other states, it's called a licensed teacher. A family would not be able to just hire me to do their homeschooling on their behalf, right? Only the parents are allowed to homeschool, right? And so the idea is that we can't have a child for any more than 50% of school hours, with the assumption that the parents would be homeschooling during those other hours. So
I got you.
It's tricky. It was just hard to figure out, right? But yeah, we are an LLC. We did start the process to become a nonprofit. I'm still not sure how I feel about that, because I know other school founders who, they started a nonprofit with the best of intentions, and then someone on the board didn't really get it and then fired the founder. And I'm like, I don't want to put in that level of work, effort, blood, sweat, and tears, money, for somebody who doesn't get it the way I get it to just kick me out. And so it's been a journey of, I know so much more about the law now than I did a year ago, right? And so I'm figuring that out. The only reason that we're interested in being a nonprofit is for, grants. We want to make this an affordable option. Spokane is kind of a poor city. There's a lot of poverty and a lot of trauma here, and a lot of families, even if they want very much for this for their children, and even though we work with every family who comes to us and is like, I want this for my kids, but I can't afford it, we figure it out, right? I try to make it as accessible as possible. And so by becoming a nonprofit, that opens up more grant money to make it possible. But then there's also strings attached, like filling out the IRS form 1023, right? Like we don't really fit in any of those categories, like what you were mentioning. And that's tricky because if you call yourself a particular category, then you have the strings attached with that particular category that might not even make sense for what it is you actually do. So it's very tricky. So that process is kind of on hold right now while we suss things out and while we grow and as we learn new things about what this is and what we can reasonably expect from our community as far as showing up and support like that. So that's where we're at with that. And yeah, I do have some news. So we are looking at the process of becoming a state approved school. So another reason why this process took so long, another of the first people I called was the state. And I said, hey, I want to do this alternative school, blah, blah, blah. And they told me, if you appear to be a school, we will assume you're a school. And if you're not an approved school, we will shut you down. I'm like, thank you for letting me know that, right? And so in Washington, it's called becoming an approved school, a capital A approved. And it's actually a very reasonable process. It's all about health and safety of the space, making sure there's enough egress, if there's a fire. I have no complaints about the process. I think it's so reasonable. But you can only submit applications like once a year. If you miss that deadline, wait till next year, right?
Oh, wow.
And so I'm going to be visiting the other two self-directed education schools on the West Side next month because they've been approved for decades, right? I want to see exactly what are you doing, right? And I've already had multiple phone calls with them both. How do you do it? How do you do self-directed education and fulfill all the state requirements? And they explained how it works. I'm like, all right, I can do this. And so I want to visit them and really observe exactly what they're doing and pick their brains so that I can put together a really solid application. However, my concern was we're outdoors, right? We don't have a building to inspect, which is part of the application process. And I was wondering, will we be automatically disqualified for not having a building? So I reached out to the State Board of Education and they say the law is silent on this, which means it's okay. Yay!
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yay.
They were like, as long as you feel like you can fulfill the other requirements, you're good.
You're okay.
Yeah. So I just got that news yesterday. So it's very exciting.
That is so. Congratulations. It seems like you both have been on this amazing journey of learning and navigating something that hasn't really been created yet. So you are pioneering this, what I keep seeing as a bridge between that perpetuates the self-directed education that we have created at home for unschooling families and people that follow that philosophy, and then going that into a space that may not be necessarily run by the parents as far as because people still have to work, their houses, I still have to buy food and pay bills and whatnot. Yeah. So I would love for those spaces to follow a very good flow that wasn't an interruption as far as how we treat our children, and to go between the home and the space and the space and the home. It's a good flow between self-directed education at home and the space. So we have the state that you're in. So for people that are interested in creating that unschooling space, self-directed education, we have the state that you're in as your starting point. Then we have your funding. So as far as funding, when you consider some organizations like VELA, the VELA grant, do they only give to nonprofit? Is that one of the requirements, or no? You both have been recipients of that, right?
Right, yeah.
Yes. They don't, I will just say, you don't need to be a nonprofit to receive their micro grant, but you do need to be a nonprofit. I don't know if you know this, Katy, because I just found out last year, but you do need to be a nonprofit if you're going to qualify for any of their further on funding. They've changed the name of their further on funding a few times, but their application opened up for it this past fall, and I was really hoping to apply for it. And then when I read through the requirements, it said you did need to be a nonprofit. So just so you know that, Katy, I know I was disappointed, but we were already well on our way to becoming nonprofit. And I out and said, hey, we're in the process. Can we apply now? They said, no, you have to wait. So hopefully this year, 2025, I believe they'll open it up towards the end of the year. So fingers crossed, we are fully nonprofit by then and can request because they do these micro grants of like $5,000 or $10,000, which are great and they're so helpful. But then they have this like much bigger, much more competitive funding opportunities. But the criteria is a lot, more strict or narrow, I guess is the better word.
Huh.
Yeah, I just got the grant this past, like I applied last April and got it over the summer, the first tier. And I think when I applied, they still had the second tier was $250,000. But by the time I got the grant, just a couple months later, by the time I received the money, they had changed it to it was $150,000 and then also a loan program as well. But
They
yeah,
do have a
thank you for that heads up about the nonprofit status. I did not know that.
No,
That is so interesting. Now, when you go again to funding here in Michigan, there's a like a co-op, it's called Homeschool Connections. Some of the funding that in the state can apply towards some of the classes, but obviously there's like strings attached to the money. Does your families have access to perhaps state funding that could go towards your space? Like the money stays with the child, like the education taxes that we pay. Like they do, I think it's in the state of Iowa. And let me look at this because I think I wrote it
Florida has
down.
that as well.
Minnesota has that as well, where the money goes with a child towards the space that they're part of versus just the one school district that their taxes are associated with.
No, Florida has this, and I don't.
Yes, Florida has that. So does New Mexico and Washington, you guys don't have that access to any kind of state funding? No?
No, we have nothing like that here. In fact, apparently Arizona has something, because since we're neighbors, people often move from Arizona to here and then they ask, where's the funding? And we're like, there isn't any. You're on your own. Your district doesn't need to give you supplies or anything, like nothing. So yeah, I mean, we don't have much oversight, and a lot of homeschool families say, well, with money comes oversight.
Yes.
And we don't want the oversight, so we're finding the money.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, I think if there was an option for it, there are plenty of families who would take advantage of it, and it would be beneficial for us because they could potentially use it at our space. I mean, depending on what the requirements were to be an approved recipient of that
of the money. Yes, I definitely follow under I don't really want any, and not necessarily the oversight. Like, I don't want to have to be required to do something that I am not really supportive of. And there's nothing like that in the state of Washington either, right, Katy?
No, not that I'm aware of. What Washington does instead is they create a lot of different educational options within the public school system. So they have different programs that try to catch, for lack of a better word, students who are struggling at different ages, different programs, parent partnership programs, so that homeschoolers can still come in so many days a week for, more traditional instruction. Or there's a program called Open Doors for kids who are in danger of dropping out. And then there's a program, Alternative Learning Experiences, where it's like the same state standards, but held off-site from the school. So there's a lot of different options they've come up with to try to fill that gap, but we haven't gotten to the free money for homeschoolers part of this story.
I think you both are pioneering the road for other people, other spaces to start. Do you apply for grants from different foundations, even as a business? Or is that not an option at all?
I've applied for some grants that are for-profit businesses. I don't think we haven't received any yet. Well, we did get a grant from our city back at the beginning, when we first opened. That was definitely like a COVID relief thing that was going on.
Okay.
And we started like just in the nick of time to be eligible for it. So that was great. And it was for anybody. It was for profit, nonprofit. And I've applied for some for-profit grants, but haven't received any.
Yes, that is, definitely the money. It sounds like the logistics are in the work. You're both are recreating what it looks like to be a space for children, for what education can look like. Now, let's talk about some happy stories. What are some of the stories or maybe interactions that kind of keep you going? Because you have both put in an incredible amount of work, time, money, effort into building the spaces. So what are your happy moments that you'll look back when things are just a little bit tougher, like it sometimes happens, So what are your stories, Kristen? The happy stories for you?
I mean, it's hard. First of all, I don't know if I want to talk about specific stories, but
true. Yeah, no, you don't have to.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all the little things. I'm really all about like, focusing on the little things. So it's great to see kids progress and change in our space. It's really neat to see their growth. And it's also really helpful for me personally to look back and see the growth of the whole thing.
Mhm.
Like I said, when I started, I knew 2 homeschool families, and now I know so many homeschool families, and some have come into our space briefly and then left, and some for different reasons. Some have been with us for, a few years at this point, almost from the beginning, which is really amazing. The friendships and connections that I see amongst the kids are fabulous. We have I can't even really take credit for this one except for providing the space, but we have 2 parents that started a teen group um, about a year and a half ago, and it is our most successful. It is our most attended club, and so there's like 20 plus kids in that teen group. Um, and for the most part, they meet for 2.5 hours at night every week, and they have just formed such a great little community of teens in the homeschool group and in the homeschool community in our city. And we actually had to close it to more people because they're like, we're about as big as we want to be.
Yeah.
And so, I'm like, well, should we start a second version of this, because we have more people still asking for it and stuff like that. So I think our teen group is one of the things I'm most excited about. But again, just our overall growth and all of the changes that we've experienced, just the evolution, I guess. It's been quite an evolution for us.
I love that. What about you, Katy? What keeps you going?
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to say the biggest thing for me is just seeing what the kids discover when they have the time, space, materials, and support to do so. Things that I never saw in the public school system, right? Where we're outdoors, we have this huge straw bale pyramid and other like 8 foot long straw bales and all this like enormous pieces of scrap wood, and they're just free to do whatever they want with. They're kind of teaching themselves
Mhm.
physics, right? Trying different things with the boards and the tires and the straw bales, figuring things out. And it's so cool. Every time I'm there to set things up, I always think to myself, like, what are they going to do today? Right. And I never know what they're going to do. And I see like little kids figuring out engineering problems because they're trying to solve their own problem and figure out a better way to get to the top of the pyramid, or all kinds of things, and it's delightful. And then the other thing I see kind of in the same category is once in a while we'll have a rules meeting, right? And our rules meeting is we'll sit at the picnic table and we pass around a stone, and then when it's your turn, you just say how you want to be treated.
Mm.
And I write
Yeah.
that down as a rule. And they help each other out. Like, how do we word that? Like, is that
Mhm.
like oh, I'm blanking on examples right now, but it's a very much a collaborative effort. Like, how do we turn that into a rule? Like, how do we word that so it makes sense for everybody? And then there's a lot of discussion that goes on between them. Like, they'll think of examples where that won't work and a different way to word it so that it does work. And we just had one of these, oh gosh, last week. And these kids, some of them are 4, 5, 7 years old, right? They sat for like 30 minutes discussing it, having a very thoughtful, respectful, interesting discussion about how to do this, how to work together. And the parents of the 2 youngest kids, they were standing at a little bit of a distance watching, like they couldn't believe that kids were sitting for that long and engaged for that long and participating for that long. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful what kids are capable of if we just let them.
If we just let
That's
them.
it fires me up. I love it.
Yeah, that is so interesting that you said that, you guys talk about how you want to be treated, because often when we go into the school system, we are taught how to treat others better than we treat ourselves, and how to ignore our needs on behalf of others, being the teachers, being the system itself, the classroom. So you are constantly being told to ignore your needs to be able to satisfy other people's needs. So to go back to that, I feel like that's what I've been working as an adult and also in my family, for us to go back to that innate knowing of what we need and how we want to be treated. And as a result, then we end up giving that back to our people. You guys are such an inspiration. Now, tell me, how do you see? I don't want to say a prediction. All of us talked about the shift that we see in the alternative education movement, respectful, peaceful parenting, unschooling, all of that. People are finding out what works for them. What do you hope to see, or what are you seeing that you're like, oh, I'm thinking about 5 years, this will be more common? Like, what are your thoughts and predictions, hopes, inspirations? Let's share all of that.
Uh, I would love to see our public school system, like, radically transformed, and to offer, more self-directed paradigm, like a more self-directed shift. I don't know that I'm hopeful that that'll happen because,
Yeah.
while a lot of us call the public school system broken, there's also the same people might say it's working exactly as it's intended to work. And so without like a much bigger shift, like not structural, I'm losing the word that I want for that, but systemic. We would need a much bigger systemic shift to see that happen in public schools. I do think there's signs of it happening, in the teacher shortage. There's so many of us that are going, this is not how I want to work with children, and this is not a healthy way to work with children, and this isn't okay. And many of us were in it to try and change it, and then we went, oh, this is never going to happen, so I need to leave and do my own thing. So I could potentially see more of that happening. My worry is for the families that are still stuck in the system and don't see a way out. But the more centers we can create, the more spaces we can have, the more aware people will hopefully become. And so it's not just teachers leaving, of course, it's families leaving as well.
Yes.
And maybe enough people will leave from both sides, the teachers and the students, that at some point somebody will wake up and say, oh, we need to get these kids back here and these teachers back here. And the only way it's going to happen is to make some really, really big changes. So.
Yes, let's put it out into the universe. I always tell my son, I'm like, when you speak into the universe listens. So I'm hoping that will happen. What about you, Katy? What do you see, or what are your hopes, dreams, inspirations for, this shift that we all see happening?
My biggest hope is for children to get the respect that they deserve as human beings. Like the end, right? When I had my parent meetings, I would say, like, I hate how schools treat kids. And then I realized, oh, the word hate is turning people off. And so I switched that to, I'm not okay with how schools treat kids. And everyone can relate to that. Everyone has something about school that they're not okay with. I'm not okay with them being treated like second-class citizens. I'm not okay with, like, the number one cause of violence or death among young people is violence, and number two is suicide. There's a huge mental health crisis among our young people. I'm not okay with any of that. My hope is that people see children as real human beings and treat them as such. I see children as my greatest teachers. I wish it was a school adults could go to learn from kids on how to play again and how to be joyful again.
That is so true, though. Yes, I wrote something in a few months back or something, that kids are our greatest cosmic teachers, because they truly are. I mean, there is not one day that I go without learning something from my children about how to just be present and how to not make something that is not the end of the world be like, make me feel like it's the end of the world. They'd be like, it's not the end of the world. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, and I'm like, oh, it really isn't. Things just come and happen, So as we move to closing, so we talked about the state that you're in. For those parents or teachers that are inspired to open up a space and kind of make this bridge just so much wider with options for families. So we talked about a state. We talked about funding, how right now the funding and the insurance, all of that, it's still really a gray area because people haven't defined the categories, because we love putting everything in categories. We cannot just be. So So there's still some of those things that we're working through. What are some of your words of wisdom for those people, or teachers, families that are maybe getting together and be like, we just need to create something here. Like, I would love to create something here in Michigan, right, for our Michigan families. Which we have a large homeschool community. But beyond the state regulations and some of the funding, what are your words of wisdom for people to be inspired and kind of jump in? Like I would normally, I would be like Kristen, jump in and just do it and learn along the way. Or for some people that are like Katy, that are like more research, kind of thought out process about starting a place. How about you, Kristen? What are your words of wisdom for them beyond what we share about the state and the funding?
I guess I would say, like, don't be afraid of failure. I think that's why a lot of people don't start, because they're like, well, what if it doesn't work? And it's like, well, but what if it does? It's that whole like, what if you fly kind of metaphor. So, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and you can always try again or not. You can just realize like, okay, that wasn't the project for me. But what if it does? And what if more people come? And what if, all of those amazing things? So I guess that's my, like, do it scared is kind of the.
Yes. It is scary though. How about you, Katy?
Oh gosh, one thing I hear myself tell people is that if you see a problem, that means it's yours to fix. Right. And so if you have a problem with your children's school or any of it, every person's journey is going to be different. Every person's center is going to be different. It's all going to be kind of on the ethos and values of the founder and the reasons why it's founded. And so if you're thinking about starting a center, it might look very different from mine, or very different from Kristen's, or very different from anything else that's already existing. But I would say trust. Trust that if you see a real problem in your community and you're really trying to fix it, trust that you're not the only one who sees that problem. And if you, fly up your flag and see who else salutes it, right? Because there are other people out there who are waiting for someone like you.
Yes.
Who will join you and who will help you, but they never will if you don't get started.
Oh my goodness. That is so powerful though. So thank you both so much for being here. I want to close up with, how can people support you? So if people are listening right now and they may not have children anymore. Like, I hear a lot of support from people whose children are now grown, and they say, I wish this would have been available to us in the past. So, and a lot of people are always willing to help and support. How can people support your journey to make it a little bit better, and so you can reach more people?
So for us, my organization is called ABQ Homeschool Connection. We will have a name change at some point, but I'm not allowed to share it yet.
Okay.
But for now, you can find us on Facebook. You can follow us there. We're also on Instagram. But I think our presence on Facebook is a little bit bigger. And then, if there's unschool families that want support, we have that support group that I mentioned that's monthly, and people are welcome to reach out to me to get on the mail list for that. And then if anybody wants to donate financially, I will say we are not a 501c3 yet, so your donations are not tax deductible just yet. But we still do have a donations link on our website, which is homeschoolconnection.com. So if you want to send us some money, we will gratefully take it and put it to good use. But otherwise, just follow our page and share what we're doing so that other people can know about it too. Because I think just more awareness out there is really what's most important.
Yes, I love that. How about you, Katy? How can people support you?
Kind of the same thing. I just want more people to know that we exist. And so we're the Spokane Learning Co-op. We have a Facebook page. We have the Friends of the Spokane Learning Co-op Facebook group. We have our mailing list from our website. The more that people can just plug into what we're already doing and sharing what we're doing, and talk to others about what self-directed education is, and talk to other people about what we're doing, that really helps us. That word of mouth is so helpful to help us bring more families in. And then also by staying in the loop as we go along and move towards the process of becoming a full-time K through 12 option, we're really going to need that support. And so, sign up for the mailing list. It's www.SpokaneLearningCoop.org. Find us on Facebook, Spokane Learning Co-op. Reach out to me, be my friend. I don't know. It's fun.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your journey and kind of where you're at in the process. I really hope people are inspired by your dedication, by just jumping into, I don't want to say unknown, but just really building a different paradigm than what we're used to. And that really does take courage. So thank you both again for being here. For everyone out there, please remember that your time is precious. I hope you're making it count. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If this episode resonated with you and you'd like to support our guests, be sure to check out the links to the groups provided in the show notes. We'd also be grateful for your support by sharing our podcast and leaving a review on your platform of choice. To stay updated, subscribe to our email list at theunschoolingLifestyle.com, follow our YouTube channel, or join our free Facebook community. Your engagement helps us continue to spread the message of living a life of partnership with our children. Until next time, please remember that your time is precious. I hope you're making it count.